Hello, welcome. I have a little brain teaser to get you warmed up for today's video. So what do the three following foods have in common? Number 1, pico de gallo. Number 2, cottage cheese. And number 3, coffee. If you came up with foods that I like, yes, that is true. But what I was going for is these are all in a category called fermented foods. But the title of this video is about probiotic foods. So are all fermented foods probiotic foods? Let's get into that. I'm Dr. Katrina Coulter. I'm an infectious disease specialist and I make educational health videos. Today we're going to talk about fermented foods and probiotics and all the health benefits that come with it. Probiotics are live microorganisms that, when given or taken in adequate amounts, convey a health benefit to the host or you. Probiotics have been growing in popularity over the past several years as we have recognized the role that they play in maintaining a healthy microbiome. So fermentation is a process that humans have been using for more than 10,000 years, and likely something we stumbled upon accidentally. We change the nature of food using live microorganisms, and these can be bacteria, mold, or yeasts. And often this involves processing sugars. This was used to preserve foods, but it was also used to change the flavor profile and complexity of foods. There are three main types of fermentation. There's lactic acid fermentation that results in a lactic acid product, alcohol fermentation that results in ethanol, and then there is acetic acid fermentation resulting in vinegar. This is an anaerobic process, meaning it doesn't breathe air in most cases, and so it has also a byproduct of carbon dioxide. When one thinks about fermented foods, usually the most common foods that come to mind are going to be yogurt, sauerkraut, sourdough bread, and pickles. But there are so many others out there, and likely you're eating some of them fairly regularly, not even realizing that they're fermented foods. So some examples of that would be like the pico de gallo that I mentioned, that chunky, fresh salsa, but to be true pico de gallo, it needs to sit on the counter for a couple days and ferment at room temperature. Other examples would be things like kombucha, kimchi, soy sauce, apple cider vinegar. Even salami is a fermented food. There's also many other dairy products other than just yogurt, like creme fraiche, cottage cheese, a bunch of different hard and soft cheeses, cream cheese, buttermilk, sour cream. There's some fermented bean products like tempeh, natto. As I mentioned in the beginning, coffee, vanilla, and chocolate are all fermented foods. And don't forget beer and wine. There are so many fermented foods across many different cultures, and if I didn't mention one, I'd love to hear from your culture what a traditional fermented food is. Please leave it in the comments. And for a more comprehensive list of fermented foods, you can head over to my website at katrinacoultermd.com and grab a list of fermented foods. Are all of these foods probiotic? And how do they ferment? Where do these live microorganisms come from? Often many of these food products have them on them when they're harvested. And that's why it's important that we take good care of our soil, because we want healthy microorganisms in our soil that then is conveyed to our food. So examples of that would be like chocolate and coffee. When the cherries are harvested, they're covered in this kind of sticky layer called mucilage, and that sits inside the husk and ferments naturally until it's further processed. And that conveys the complex flavor profile that many people get really excited about when they're talking about coffee or chocolate. Bacteria or yeast can also be added, and that's what happens in the case of most of the dairy products. For example, with yogurt, we add lactobacillus to milk, and that's how we create yogurt. Do all of these foods contain probiotics? And the answer is no, but they're still really good for your digestion. So the foods don't all contain probiotics, because many of them are further processed after the fermentation is done. So these would be things like cooking them, like in the case of sourdough bread. So you have the fermentation occurring with the starter, but then you're going to cook the bread at a high temperature, and that is going to kill the live microorganism. Or in some cases, these products are pasteurized, as in many of the sour creams are going to be pasteurized, so not contain the live organisms, or they're going to be canned. The most common probiotic containing foods that you're going to find in a supermarket are going to be yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, buttermilk. So the things that are kept cold and not canned. Now, pickles get a special mention because pickles can be prepared two ways. So we think of pickles traditionally as cucumbers that are pickled, but it could be any type of vegetable. And if they're prepared by fermenting, they're going to sit at room temperature with salt and water and take several days. Pickles can also be prepared much more quickly using vinegar, and that's sometimes called quick pickles, and these do not contain the live organisms, but the fermented pickles or fermented vegetables will, and you'll usually find those in the refrigerated section in your grocery store. But I want you to understand that there's still a ton of health benefits that you're going to get from fermented foods, even if they don't contain the live organisms or the probiotics. And that's because they still often contain the prebiotics and the postbiotics. So quick reminder, prebiotic is the fiber that the probiotics like to eat, and the postbiotics are the breakdown products or the messenger signals that our intestines use to then further regulate health in our body. And so even if an organism has been killed in the food, such as in sourdough bread, you still get the postbiotic, which is the breakdown product, or even the dead bacteria, which still conveys a health benefit. In addition, the prebiotic fiber is great for us, and it's pre-digested. So we often find that these fermented foods are more easily digested for us, and the vitamins and nutrients in them are more readily available to us, so more bioavailable. I have a more comprehensive list of fermented foods available on my website at katrinacoultermd.com, and these foods are really something that are beneficial to your health, and most of them are going to be condiments. So not something you would eat a large portion of, but something you should try to add it to your meal on a daily basis. If you found that helpful, please like or subscribe, share this with a friend, and we'll see you next time.